Hello and good morning. It's Tuesday, October the 21st, and today, trouble across the UK. Keir Starmer faces mounting problems in Scotland and Wales amid a gathering storm about the conduct of Prince Andrew and questions about what might follow there. My name is Anne McElvoy from Politico.
And I'm Sam Coates of Sky News. Welcome to Politics at Sam and Anne. Happy birthday, Peter Mandelson, by the way. There's a big old investment summit in Birmingham today to promote investment in England, led by Rachel Reeves. The Chancellor is going to promise to cut £6 billion of pointless government red tape, we heard that before, from British businesses every year. But will she get £6 billion annual growth upgrade from the OBR, which is what she's really hoping for? Colour me as sceptical. The big picture, however, is it's a day of promising investment for England. So that's the message that they want to send out.
Skeptical, Sam Coates, whoever would have thought that? This morning's playbook from Politico reports the Edgbaston Cricket Stadium will be opening its doors shortly to more than 350 business bods and a handful of senior cabinet ministers. The West Midlands Mayor, Richard Parker, will kick it all off shortly before 10 o'clock before passing on to the Trade Secretary, Peter Kyle. Big theme, gunning for the regulators, cutting red tape, getting growth moving, or perhaps blaming some others if growth isn't moving. Alarm bells may well be sounding, however, for Keir Starmer across two other nations today. Next May's elections in Scotland and Wales are looking like a crunch point for the Prime Minister's future. There's also mounting concern in Labour circles that this Thursday they're heading into a historic Senedd defeat in the Caerphilly by-election in the Welsh heartlands at the hands of Reform UK and a pincer movement from Plaid Cymru.
So that's bad news in Wales. Then look over in Scotland. Now, I didn't know this, but the SNP have decided to weaponise the Prime Minister's digital ID plans and try and use them against Labour in the run-up to next May's Scottish Parliament elections. The SNP have secured today their first parliamentary debate on what they insist on calling Brit cards. Now, Keir Starmer's insisting that's not the name for obvious reasons, but that's what the SNP are calling it, and there's a Westminster Hall debate with Pete Wishart, deputy leader. The SNP government in Scotland say they are going to use their powers, the Holyrood powers, to block the introduction of digital ID in Scotland. In theory, it's a reserved power in Westminster, but it's the kind of grievance issue the SNP use very well. We're going to talk about that Scottish topic in a moment. I've got some exclusive new polling on digital ID to go with it, as well as what's going on in Wales.
Two other stories are running hot. Can the government get the grooming gangs inquiry back on track after two victims resigned from efforts to get it up and functioning? And what next for the eventful Kent County Council after a leaked video showed what reform running the council looks like in close-up, and it ain't pretty.
The top story is not explicitly a political one. It's the consequences for Prince Andrew of the posthumous publication today of a book by his late accuser, Virginia Giuffre. Now, before its publication on Friday, the Prince announced that he would no longer use his Duke of York or Knight of the Order of the Garter titles. And today, The Guardian leads with allegations that Prince Andrew's team tried to hire internet trolls to hassle Giuffre while he hid behind the well-guarded gates of Balmoral Castle to avoid being served court papers. He denies any wrongdoing.
The scrutiny on Andrew's conduct, even beyond the Epstein scandal itself, is spreading. The Times has revelations that he hasn't paid rent for 2 decades on the Royal Lodge in Windsor, where he resides and which is owned by the Crown Estate. The Public Accounts Committee Chair, Margaret Hodge, has said to the paper the Crown Estate is owned by us, therefore on behalf of the taxpayers, and the onus is on running it to maximise any income out of it. We should not be treating anyone in a different way. Pretty clear message there that there's beginning to sort of spread into political responses as well as how the palace would like to frame this, Sam.
Across the 20 years I've been dipping in and out of subjects like royal finances, it's always struck me that the government thought its job to try and in some way protect the royal family's blushes from anything. And transparency in the royal family do not go hand in hand together whenever a lot of people have tried to look out for it. So it was quite something last night when we discovered that Prince Andrew had only been paying essentially peppercorn rent for his royal lodge, and it feels odd that should come out now rather than something we should have been entitled to know about all along. But Anne, for years, Andrew was involved in politics as well as simply being a member of the royal family with everything that entailed. Specifically, I remember this all too well, he was a trade envoy on behalf of successive governments for the United Kingdom. And therefore, he was a figure on the diplomatic circuit and even a fringe figure on some of the PM trips that I went on in the Brown Blair years. So if I saw him on the diplomatic circuit a bit, I bet my bottom dollar that you have seen him on the diplomatic circuit quite a lot. Do you have any recollections of that?
I do actually, and of course, it's got the word Davos in it, like most scenarios of shame. But he was a big hoster of trade receptions and other parties as well at Davos at the World Economic Forum. And in 2015, I just happened to look back, Sam, and see when I'd last met him in detail. Even when the allegations from Virginia Giuffre were public, he was still a draw there. Royal Stardust was doing its job, really, of convening people. It was a big old reception, very lavish, cream of British business there, and of course, international guests as well. It also reminded me that I'd spent time with him at a reception for Hillary Clinton here in London a few years previously. And there he opened up a bit to me about his life in the royal family. It was quite a long reception. There were long speeches. I don't think he was that interested in Hillary Clinton's memoirs. So we ended up talking about why he didn't drink. Why he decided from early on that he'd said to the Queen when he joined the Navy that he wouldn't drink. He didn't think it would be good for him, etc. But that he was still a pretty gregarious person. And we actually ended up with him talking about what kind of journalist the various members of the inner royal family would be. And he was sort of the Queen would quite obviously want to be racing editor. The Queen obviously was still alive then. Charles, he said, he's so opinionated, he'd have to be an op-ed columnist. And, looking back to that, I had quite positive experiences when I rubbed shoulders with him as, just as a mere journalist at being around at these things. And it's a reminder of how much is staked on one person in the royal family and their role, what we do or don't know about them. And if you'd asked me then, I would have thought overall, he's net value. He has a reputation for overspending. We've seen that now all coming out. But broadly speaking, he's doing a job, on behalf of the Crown for British business. So the question, I think, is being raised as things get worse and more could come out and worse, and it's bad enough, what the allegations in these memoirs of the late Virginia Giuffre, is does Parliament get involved? Do MPs feel they need to get further involved, as you pointed out, in no longer kind of shielding Andrew in any way from the kind of scrutiny, opprobrium, or some sort of punishment and distance that at the moment it's just been left to the palace to sort it out? Is that sustainable?
I think that what government ministers spy in this is a trap that, whilst you can pledge and you can promise to, for instance, initiate legislation in the Commons in order to formally strip Prince Andrew of his titles, that will suck up quite a lot of parliamentary time and energy and distract from what I was about to say, from the main business of the day, but it's it's a little bit unclear and a little bit opaque what the main parliamentary business of the day. So if it's actually, as I say this, it's slightly hard to mount an argument that that this government is particularly busy in the Commons at the moment. But nevertheless, I think the wider distraction and the wider danger of this area is something that government ministers don't really want to spend a lot of time dwelling on. They've got enough problems elsewhere.
Can I just ask a question then, Sam? So do you think, because that it does feel as if it is now getting worse. I mean, there were areas that were still very firm denials that used to come from the palace about Andrew, and particularly about the alleged sex abuse, which he continues to deny, but that you no longer see that being fronted by the palace. I mean, do you think therefore MPs will want to keep their distance from it? I can see that the argument that it would be, is it really business that the Commons should get involved in? But I think it's going to be hard to hold back. Some MPs are saying if we don't have our say on this, and particularly if things continue to get worse at this kind of rate, that it could just look as if they're blind to what a lot of people are finding, needs a stronger reaction.
So I think what is quietly going on here is that the government is taking its cue, I suspect, entirely from the royal family, which has signalled it's not asking for legislation to do this. Um, there is a change of tone in the monarchy, and I think that came with the change of monarch, because the late Queen, clearly had a lot of affection for Prince Andrew. Prince Charles takes a different attitude. King Charles takes a different attitude, and Prince William takes a further harsher attitude again. So there are divisions in the royal family, but I think at this point ministers would take a cue from the monarch, who has signalled he wants to go this far and currently no further. So why would ministers put them on the side of a different bit of a slightly split royal family? But we will see as this story dominates this week. The truth is that all of this gives the government a little bit of breathing space, Anne. And while breathing space isn't automatically helpful when the fundamentals are as tricky as they are for this government, nevertheless, I think not being in the eye of the storm is somewhere that Danish would quite like to be. We need to edge a little bit closer to the more regular fare. So I'm going to just give you the latest YouGov Sky Times voting intention. And this shows the problem of British politics if you're sitting in Downing Street. Reform's still well on top, slightly down from its highs, and down 1 percentage point on the week at 26%. Labour unchanged on 20%. Conservatives unchanged on 17%, so still no bounce for the stamp duty announcement. And here is the most interesting thing of the poll today. Lib Dems and Greens are now tied, both on 15%. Now, we've got there because the Greens on the week have gone up 2 more percentage points. This is the bounce that you're seeing from conference season, which is the Green bounce. And following the election of Zach Polanski, who's now sort of gone up a gear in the media with his brand of eco-populism and galvanising the left. Actually, suggestions, Anne, that Keir Starmer did a U-turn yesterday and decided to go to the COP climate change summit in Brazil next month, which he hadn't expected to do. Some say because of this fresh green threat against the advice of, I think, some advisors in the last few weeks. What do you make of that?
I think, having been at the last COP in Baku, there was definitely a sense around the Prime Minister. Of course, if you're doing the environment job, etc., you have to go. But these things were a lot of air miles, and therefore also quite a lot of criticism about the COP process itself. And maybe this Brazil one, we would have a more modest showing, put it that way. I wasn't particularly expecting Keir Starmer to go. But I think you're probably right to say it has swung the balance between going and looking as if Starmer is proactive on green issues. Like it or not, it could take ages to get this COP thing in Brazil. The logistics are quite mind-boggling. But by going, you are making clear to Greens at home as well as the international community that you haven't given up being in the fight for the environmental movement. The question then is, can you credibly make something of that when you will have, how can you out-green the Greens? We often talk about, can you out-reform, and is that a good strategy or not if you're under threat from a challenger?
The problem that you get when you're in Downing Street is when you have to look at all the different areas of potential challenge. It's not just the left, it's also the nations. On Scotland, I am fascinated that the SNP government are going to use the digital ID plans as a battering ram against this government. Now, I've got some new polling on that. Now, the first thing the polling does on digital ID is confirm that there's been basically a bit of Keir Starmer's Midas touch about it. When it was announced last month, it was even Stevens, 42% support, 45% oppose. It's now gone clearly one way: 33% support, 55% oppose, which is pretty ugly. But here's the thing I want to highlight this morning. If you look around the UK and specifically Scotland is the least in favour of any bit of the UK towards digital ID. 60% of people in Scotland oppose, 28% in favour. So perhaps in that context, unsurprisingly, the SNP are now going to oppose digital ID. It's a reserve matter, as I suggested earlier, which means that they can't formally really stop it, but they can cause all sorts of problems. For instance, if they want to ensure that local public services don't recognise digital ID, if Scottish bars and other services just don't take it, they can massively slow down the rollout in Scotland of this. So all sorts of potentially tricky implications for a Scottish opposition. That feels like it has the potential to run into something quite ugly, Anne.
It does. It just reminds you what a world of pain this is going to be to get anywhere with it. I did not know that about the Scottish situation, and it's just a reminder that there's nothing at all straightforward about this idea or its implementation, or even getting support for it in principle. And we've also got an actual electoral test in Wales on Thursday coming up in a Senedd seat. Caerphilly, the South Wales seat's been solidly Labour since devolution in 1999, and also national elections sends Labour MPs like clockwork back to the Commons for over a century. I think one defected to the SDP in 1981, but that's my Trivial Pursuits political question. But more seriously, it is now in play in the 2021 elections. Labour had a 5,000 odd majority over Plaid Cymru. Now it seems to be third, with Reform on top, then Plaid, and then Labour a distant third. So that is quite the turnaround.
I think there are people genuinely worried about Thursday in Labour. I was getting messages overnight from well-connected Labour folk thinking that this is ominous. Ominous because of what it means for Labour in Wales, ominous then what it means for the future of the Prime Minister. So I think the question is, has Keir Starmer done enough in this Senedd by-election? I am obligated to say, Anne, that there is a full list of candidates in our show notes because there's a full slate of candidates in that Senedd election. But I just want to highlight one thing. There's a really rather good piece sent to me by our producer, Evan, by Neil Lawson in the New Statesman. And he makes the point that over on the right in this by-election, you've got parties working together. Jacob Rees-Mogg took to social media last week to all but demand that Tory voters in Caerphilly back reform, right? But on the progressive side, sort of on the left of politics in Wales, there absolutely isn't any working together, kind of mutual interest, especially not from Labour. And, at conference in Liverpool, and Enid Morgan, who's, of course, the Labour leader in Wales, compared Plaid with Reform. Now, she said that Plaid was different poison, same bottle. Now, Neil Lawson is making a point that Neil Lawson has made for many, many years about the importance of parties on the left to work together. And so he makes the case for that here. But you can see the issue that the vote on the left is split just at the point where the vote on the right is coming together potentially. And just looking at the polls, Reform is a long way ahead of even of Plaid, actually, in some of them. So there is the challenge. How does Labour respond? And as a harbinger of next year, well, I think it will worry people. There is a curiosity, Anne, which some Welsh Labour MPs were pointing out to me, and Welsh figures were pointing out to me, the completely new electoral system next year in Wales, the Welsh elections. And it is so goddamn complicated. It's a variation on the Dehont system. Please no, you can Google it. That it is not clear that Reform would automatically come out on top in that system. The point of the change is to water down the dominance of first past the post, but that makes it very, very hard to predict, looking at opinion polls, what's going to happen. But whatever happens, I think the challenge is a clear and present danger for Labour.
Absolutely. And there's an unpredictability to the distribution that comes out of this particular electoral system in places where it is used on the continent. As we're heading out of time, Sam, I'm going to leave it just by saying we conducted that last section under the eagle eye of our Welsh producer, Evan Hall, who will be speaking to us strictly afterwards, I'm sure, about any pronunciation lapses that I certainly may have made. There's no pressure there, is there, Sam?
No. Well, we may as well bring that moment to the present. I think our alarm has gone off, as you possibly heard. So that's it for Tuesday's Politics at Sam and Anne's. We will be back in the morning tomorrow for Wednesday's PMQs and everything that comes with that.
See you then.